So I would like to welcome everyone aboard this session. We will now start our live session with a short tilawat Quran, and then I will briefly introduce you all to Association of Muslim Professionals. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بأصحاب الفيل ألم يجعل كيدهم في تضليل وأرسل عليهم طيرا أبابيل ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل فجعلهم كعصف مأكول صدق الله العظيم. Thank you so much. So, welcome to AMP WebTalk. AMP stands for Association of Muslim Professionals. About AMP, AMP is registered in India, USA, UK, and Australia as a non-profit organization. It has completed 12 years serving our community in the field of education, employment, empowerment, and has a vision to positively impact lives of 10 million people by 2030. Our mission is to empower the underprivileged for a greater benefit of the society in general and nation as a whole. And our vision is to be advanced in education, socially progressive, culturally vibrant, politically influential, and economically dynamic. So what AMP has achieved in past 12 years is right in front of you. So you can just have a glance on your screen. You will be able to know we basically work under 5 major domains: school development programs, employment assistance cells, scholarships and self-employment, AMP Resource Center, awards and partnership. I'll give it a couple of seconds and then I'll move to another slide. So you can just have a glance. AMP's reach on ground presence. Currently, we are present in more than 100 chapters, and that is spread across 25 states within India. We have our active volunteers present in 16 countries, 6,000 plus active members who are connected to Association of Muslim Professionals. AMP presence online, we are connected through various social media platforms, and we have more than 125,000 members and professionals who are connected with us on these social media platforms. So if you want to be a part of AMP, you can always join AMP from our website, and we would be happy to have you all on board. I would now request Mr. Shabbir Wahid Sahab, who is the President of Association of Muslim Professionals Australia, to kindly take over this session, and we'll go ahead from there on. Shabbir Sahab?
Thank you very much, Shahed Bhai, for that introduction. And Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to this web panel discussion. The subject, of course, is remote learning, enhancing the learning experience for primary school students, and is being conducted by AMP Australia. And it is really pleasing to see that we have participants not just from Australia, but also from India and the Middle East. So welcome to you all. The format that we will pursue is that I will be asking each of our panelists 3 questions in turn, and after I have done that, then we will open the floor, inshallah, the digital floor or the virtual floor, to questions and answers. Now, for the Australians listening in, you know that we in Victoria have gone into stage 4 restrictions, with all school students across the state now needing to study from home. And this situation applies in various degrees across the world as we are in the midst of this pandemic. Now, going to school has always been a routine for both students as well as parents. There have been class times, class duration, breaks, team activity, and so on. And it also enables supervised social engagement. But also there are many positives to home-based education. And a good quality education is not always structured, academic, or purely scholastic. Learning can happen in different contexts, and home life, of course, can provide many opportunities for children to engage with nature, bond with family, learn civic responsibility, and focus on social health. Now, remote learning is a rather complex balance of online content and physical interaction with content that cannot be delivered on the screen of a device. So it is with this intent to help us and all our participants find this complex balance that I would now like to introduce our three expert panelists today. Dr. Ruby Hameed is a general pediatrician. She trained in pediatric medicine in the United Kingdom. She has worked in Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, UK, and has been based in Melbourne since 2003. She has a broad experience in pediatrics, but has developed a special interest in developmental and behavior disorders as well as allergy. And I think she is going to be a major contributor to our discussions today. Nabeela Wahid is mother and homemaker, blessed with 3 children, 2 of whom are in primary school. She plans, organizes, facilitates, and delivers numerous programs aimed at Islamic education, particularly towards establishing a solid foundation of the deen and a strong sense of identity. Nabeela believes that primary education should be child-led and is a time for discovery and broadening exposure to a multitude of ideas and experiences. She works closely with families seeking to offer a holistic, well-rounded learning experience to their children. Fathima Khader is a progressive educator and currently heads Evolve Ed, a training organization that primarily works towards elevating mental health in schools. She uses mindfulness-based compassion and acceptance programs to build inner strength, enhance self-awareness, and promote emotional regulation. She is a member of the Early Childhood Association of India, the ECA, and holds an International Parent Coach Training Mastery certification from ACPI USA. So on behalf of all of us at AMP, thank you for being part of this, and I graciously welcome you all. Now, my first question is to Fathima, and Fathima, I'm so sorry you have been stranded in Melbourne since about February, but I can think of many worse places that you could have been stranded at. And after all, in spite of whatever is happening now, Melbourne is the most livable city in the world. So, Fatima, how important is it that parents replicate the school routine of, class duration, the breaks, the start and finish times during remote learning?
So thank you so much. And Jazakallah, I'm really, really happy to be here. And yes, I think Melbourne is a good place to be stranded in, but yeah, it goes against our wish because there is restriction here as well. So there's very less of movement, but nevertheless, it's good to be here. And so before I answer your question, Shabir, can I take a minute to kind of clarify something for our audience? Is that going to be okay? Because I think I'm just assuming that there are a couple of parents and mums and dads who are very new to, education. And I know that there are a lot of questions that comes, on and off. So I'd like to clarify that we're talking about remote learning, but remote learning is different from homeschooling. So the reason why I thought we should clarify and start on that note is because it kind of confuses people, and they think they're, it's something which is like, it kind of, people find it difficult to differentiate those. So just taking a minute to talk about that. So remote learning, basically, for my audience, is a model that you actually choose, is where you are enrolled. So you have your child enrolled into a school, and they give you the curriculum, they give you the support, they give you the lesson plans, they give you what you're supposed to do, homework sheets, supporting everything. Is when that's remote learning. That means you have a school they're experts who are planning things for you. But due to your choice, maybe, or circumstances, you choose, like the one that we have, is you take support from the school, but you execute it, you implement it in your place at home. Homeschooling is a model where you're not really attached. So the child is not enrolled in any of the schools. Yeah. So it's something that is completely in your domain. You have the flexibility, the adaptability. Of course, there's this bit of structure, but it's very different because you are the one who's leading the curriculum, the lesson plans, providing that space for child to learn. So here, I think when we had a discussion, there was this whole question of remote learning and homeschooling. So that's basically for the parents over here. Yeah. So since Shabir Bhai has just asked me about remote learning and how important it is, I think it is extremely important to keep, especially considering the fact that we're remote learning, it's important to have routines, to follow certain, because the school comes up with the plan for you, but we are the one who's executing it. So it's important to kind of work with them to understand that you as a parent is a partner to the school. And so you need to kind of build that sense of working relationship. And yes, you need to keep that routine. So there is a set of things that they give you that you have to look at starting at the day of 8 o'clock. There's a class, there's a place, there are certain requirements. Some schools also, request, like the schools that I work with, there are some schools who say that you have to, sit in school uniform because they believe that schooling is a formal, place of learning. So they expect you to create that sense of formal space as well. So you somewhere need to work on that. So it is important to create that sense of routine, to follow plans, to kind of, engage into a kind of a relationship that the school expect. But at the same time, it's also very important to understand that while you're keeping that structure, don't make it a structure which is suffocating for the child. Yeah. So sometimes, because for a child, a home is a place where he unwinds. A home is a place where he just feels himself free. So now suddenly with remote learning coming into the picture, the child is confused. The child is like, okay, now what do I do? Like, is this a casual space for me, or is it an informal space, or is it a formal space? So likewise, even though at one point of time, it is important for you to keep that sense of structure, because structure is important for a child. Children thrive well when things are structured for them. They know that from 9 to 10, there's something that you have to do. From 10 to 11, you have to do. So it is important for them. But at the same time, dear parents, don't make it too claustrophobic. Don't write it onto a stone. Somewhere that invitation needs to come in, because somewhere at the end of the day, whether it's at a school or a home, we are people who are engaging with human minds, and they're very, very dynamic in nature. So at one level, yes, it is important for any of us as a parents to keep that routine and to have those set of things that you have to do. But the kind of invitation that you hand out to children, don't make it like a military regime. Like, you have to do this, you got to do this. Give that space, for them to follow, invite. If they are not, just let them, give that space to get them off. Maybe they want to step out for some time, but allow them to step in and get back to their routine as well. So yes, in a way, it is very important. But then in a way, don't go to the extreme, say that this is what you got to do. So I think that's something which is important as a part of remote learning. Those are things that needs to be considered. And yes, it is very important to keep that in mind. Also to keep that in mind that you have to, keep in mind the place where the kid is studying from, and to, don't, get them to sit on the dining table and study. So these are things that you have to, because in somewhere in an informal setup, you are creating that formal setup. So that little bit of understanding is important. So make it playful, like what I call it as seriously playful. Like make it playful, because we're talking about primary students here. We're talking about children as young as, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-olds. So don't make it a very constrained sort of thing, but at the same time, do plan what the agenda is like, work with the schools, give them that, let them to get them to follow what the school has given you, but in a sort of a, in a sort of an invitation way. So yes, Shabibhai. So I think it is important to not impose, to invite people, to invite children to follow certain routines. But at the same time, I know how parents work because I'm a parent consultant. I get these stories every day with parents, and especially when the child is not following routines, what can I do? So discipline becomes, a big of an issue. So yeah, so I think it is important, but at the same time, don't compromise on your connection. That's the advice that I'd like to give.
Thank you, Fatima. Great points there about about it being formal in an informal environment, and I'm sure we'll get a few questions, and I'll probably come back to you on that. But my next question is now to Dr. Ruby. Dr. Ruby, in your clinical practice, have you noticed any changes as a result of remote learning?
Yes, also thank you for inviting me to the webinar and for your introduction, and thank you to all our listeners. I hope you're finding it useful. With regards to changes due to this lockdown, the majority of children, I say, report missing. They're missing going to school and interacting with their friends. They missing free play with their friends, and often display sadness and some anger towards the situation. But I want to mention in particular children with special needs who, such as with children with have learning difficulties or developmental and behavior disorders. They and their parents have found this remote learning model particularly difficult and challenging. For example, I have a set of 4-year-old Indian twins, set of twins from Indian background, who have autism. So they are in a pre-prep program. They're very used to daily routine and playing and learning through play and getting speech therapy and occupational therapy. And school has shut the doors to them. They are not allowed to go. It's a mainstream school. And it's particularly difficult because parents have no support, family support. They're from India. And these kids are quite difficult to manage. Sort of they're chasing me to give them some medication. So I think it's just an aspect that we need to think about when the effects on children. But there are other group of children who prefer this type of learning, and they found that they found this type of learning more stimulating. Some of these kids normally find the school environment challenging due to their shy and sensitive temperament, perhaps, while others were very creative, but had found this as an easier medium to express themselves. I have a 7-year-old child who was having adjusting difficulties at the school, but he has produced amazing work for his teacher, has come out of his shell. He's finding it easy to participate, I think, behind the screen, but he's participating in his class. So I think they're sort of different effects. But I would also like to mention number of my fussy eaters, children who they've had healthy weight gain during this COVID lockdown, and some others with symptoms such as tummy pains and headaches and functional constipation. They're doing very well because I think they're relaxed. They have significantly improved during this time. So I think the changing the environment has made them sort of a little bit less worried about those things. But in terms of this remote learning and effect of, we know that there's a significant increase in the screen time in this child's life. And this is always, and I find it very interesting. number of times parents tell me that, you know, he just watches TV. It's not an iPad, and they don't find, they don't associate watching TV or having TV on in the background as a part of screen time. And we all know, you know, as parents, you all know, and you know that, and I know that there's an extensive research out there of negative aspect of excessive screen time on developing brains. So I think to just sum it up, as you're asking, that overall children are finding it challenging to varying degree, and however, there's some who are thriving. Though with extended lockdown, their parents are getting fatigued now. So I think the parents are reporting that, you know, they are happy, they're supervising, but they are also getting tired, because it's quite an ask from parents to be parents and teachers. So I think,
Yes. Thank you, Doctor. Yes, I think particularly talking about the disadvantaged area, it goes down to the socioeconomic kind of levels as well. But inshallah, we will cover all of that. But thank you very much for your perspective. Going to Nabeela, I see you were very actively nodding your head about a number of things that Dr. Ruby was saying. So actually leading on from what Dr. Ruby's been saying, we often talk about children missing out on social interaction when they don't go to school, and how important, therefore, now is the role that parents and siblings can play in this remote learning scenario, particularly with an emphasis on building identity.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for having me on this panel and for hosting this. And yes, I was agreeing with a lot of points Dr. Ruby was making, because I could relate to a lot of what she was saying based on my interactions with friends and family and other talks that I have, in terms of how challenging it is for parents with children with special needs to adapt to this kind of learning. And I make dua that Allah makes it easy for all of them, and you know, removes this trial from us, so we can get back to what we were doing, inshallah, with a better perspective on life. So going back to your question, I think it's important to understand what socialization actually is. So in my opinion, it refers to social interactions and also understanding how to navigate society's social norms and rules of behavior. So within a school setting, a child is primarily only interacting socially with children their own age, whereas within a home or community environment, a child is interacting with a variety of age groups and in a variety of settings. So some skills such as conflict resolution, problem solving, compliance, obedience, curiosity, questioning, empathy, and even wisdom can be established better, which may not necessarily only be obtained in sanitized classroom environment, which in some cases can be limiting. So what we normally hear a saying that's often used is, oh, it takes a village to raise a child. So if you look at the early Muslim community under the guardianship of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was exactly this. So the Islamic framework of tarbiyah began with the immediate family unit. And this immediate family provided the foundational nurturing, but the upbringing of the child was also largely influenced by their interactions with the community at large as well. So it was not just limited to a child being grouped with peers of their own age. So every individual, irrespective of their age, their gender, or social standing, needs to be respected, valued, and encouraged to participate and to contribute. So I think we can just make use of whatever we have, whatever opportunities we have right now with our children being at home with them, to develop this sense of, a strong sense of accountability to Allah that we can establish from a young age, and making them responsible for their duties towards their Creator, as well as laying down guidelines for their interactions with each other, with Allah's creation, as adults dealing with children, and with children dealing with each other, with their siblings. So, and isn't this the foundation of our deen anyway, fulfilling the rights of Allah and fulfilling the rights of His creation? So in my personal experience, I feel that remote learning is probably a period of time for us that Allah is giving us this opportunity to lay down solid foundations of our belief systems and connect our children back to their strong Islamic roots and help them relate back to our rich culture and tradition, which will help them immensely in developing a strong sense of identity, which is so needed in our current times. So this will probably contribute in the future, inshallah, in making them more mature, empathetic, and respectful and confident members of the community, and also encourage them and to leave a lasting legacy. So maybe, you know, trying to look at the positive side of the coin, we can use remote learning to focus on character and morality, because right now the foundations of this have been so fluid and subject to distorted interpretation based on time and place. No one really knows what it means anymore. So kind of just going back to what we really should be instilling in them in those aspects. And also, I think most importantly, strengthening the bonds within our family. I think we've all become so distant. Everyone's busy, everyone's stuck in the rat race. We've never really had time to connect with our families and establish those strong connections. So maybe use this time to establish those connections. So in turn, you're building a resilient community, because, and you're doing it one family at a time, because a family is a unit of the community. So if you have a strong, resilient family, then you will have a strong, resilient community. And inshallah, when we come out of this trial, we will have used this time to push ourselves forward as a family and as an ummah, inshallah, and have renewed energy and also gain that knowledge that will not just bring about the change, but hopefully, inshallah, sustain it long term. So to sum it all up, I guess I would say that using this time to do our best to give our children a well-rounded education and nurturing them to gain cumulative knowledge and skills, and connecting back to their values and traditions, so they become lifelong learners. So they will never stagnate and always grow and always progress, no matter what the circumstances. So nothing will hold them back, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you for that. And I fully agree with what you said, that you know, a good, solid, sound, resilient family is the basis of a good community. So I certainly agree with that. And I remember my old social studies teacher telling us about it, that a family is the unit of society. So I fully agree with that. But staying with you, Nabeela, I know you have gone the extra length to actively choose to homeschool your youngest. And Fathima earlier kind of differentiated between remote learning and homeschooling. So I'm now moving towards your decision to homeschool your youngest child. Can you please tell us what influenced you, what thought processes you went to in order to make this choice?
Yep. So thank you, Fatima, for actually clarifying that at the start, because I did find a lot of people have that confusion, and nowadays the two terms are mixed up a lot, and they say, oh, you're homeschooling your children. So thank you for clarifying. And definitely, I have two children in primary school, and one of them is doing remote learning, and she's in grade 6, and I've got a younger one who I've decided to homeschool. So talking about him, the decision to homeschool my son was largely influenced by my observations during remote learning in our first lockdown. So some of the benefits I personally identified that have driven me to make this change for our family and based on our circumstances is the academic flexibility that homeschooling gives me, and also the parent and student choice of pace and approach. And what I mean by that is giving the child freedom within reason to drive their own learning. So I strongly believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us with talents and abilities that are unique to everyone, unique to us. So each and every one of us has a calling, a capability that is chosen exclusively for us by Allah. And very few have actually found this. So being able to give him meaningful learning with access to a multitude of enriching curricula, and also not being tied to a system that is largely externally result driven. And again, what I mean by that is when we are not exhausting all our time and resources on just pushing to achieve a certain rank or obtain a high grade to just tick all the boxes, but rather letting go of that pressure and allowing him to enjoy the learning process and letting him immerse himself into it. And I feel that once that curiosity is sparked, the grades will look after themselves and in some cases way exceed any set expectations. So in the short term, I've already noticed a paradigm shift in my child's approach to his learning. Previously, there was a lot of reluctance, anxiety, tears, and refusal to undertake certain tasks due to his lack of confidence and fear of failure, and also the fear of not meeting set expectations. So there is already phenomenal growth, mental and emotional stability, which to me is paramount, and as well as an increased confidence and independence. So he's taking charge of his own learning, and I'm absolutely loving that. And I strongly feel that how we acquire our skills and our knowledge is just as important as the knowledge itself. So to apply and share what we learn, because that should be our end goal of gaining knowledge, to be able to apply it and share it. So in order to do that, why we gain it, and more importantly, how we gain it, is paramount. So how do we teach is just, how we teach is just as important as why we teach and what we teach. So my role with my child is more of a mentor than a teacher. And by doing this, I'm able to connect all knowledge back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as coming from one divine source. And my child is then able to value, respect, preserve, and inshallah implement whatever knowledge he has acquired, even if it's a little at a time. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala constantly in the Quran, he lays emphasis on our efforts, on our means to the goal. So the achievement is never in our hands, but the struggle towards it is definitely in our capability. And this can be applied in all aspects of our life. So when we give it our best, most sincere effort, and then trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to see us through, then the sweetness of that struggle will become addictive, and then will become, inshallah, a perpetual propellant towards an ultimate goal. So to me, learning is more about establishing good habits, and that will make learning a lifelong endeavor, rather than just a means from getting from point A to point B. So the world is your classroom, and every lived experience can be a transformative learning moment.
Very profound, Nabeela, very profound. And thank you so much for that. I'm going to now go to Fathima again and say, I understand India too has got some equivalent of homeschooling. Is there something that you can share with us?
Yes, I think India has something equivalent. So India has a very different way of education and how they look at. So first thing I think I'd like to put this point across to all the people who are looking at us is education is very different from schooling, and that is something which needs to be understood by us. Now, in India, you have various choices. One is, it's very simple in India. In India, you put your child in a school for all these years because you want the child to write the 10th standard exam or the 12th standard exam. That's primarily the reason why their child goes to school and why the parents kind of, put them to the school. India has something called the NIOS, which is the open schooling system. But it's unfortunate that many people don't know about NIOS. And NIOS is basically like an open university, open schooling system where a child can be homeschooled. And this is basically a space which is so flexible that the child is the center of attention there. Yeah. So like Nabeela said, it's not about what the child learns, it's about how or what is being taught to the child, but it's about how the child is being taught. I'm kind of rephrasing that a little bit. It is more than what is the child being taught, it is about how the child is learning that is more important. So basically, it is child centric. It is about not what you want to teach and how you want to teach. It is about how the child is learning. Now, there are a number of education institutions, organizations, they call themselves as Montessori. I know a lot of friends in my work space who own schools, and they call themselves as unschooling because there's no structure. There's no structure at all. So basically, that is a kind of a school where a child gets up in the morning, he does all the chores, he decides where he wants to go, whether he wants to do science today or he wants to do science and jump into English, and from English he wants to get. So it's like an open setup where a child chooses his basically his learning. He chooses what he wants to do based on his moods, based on his interests. There's also a school that I know where there is a kind of a fluid sort of structure where, where engineering and math is given so much of importance. So the day long, a child chooses, I'm not going to do my language today. I'm going to sit in the workshop and I'm going to build things and I'm going to make things and I'm going to do that. I'm going to do everything that's going to, incite my curiosity, and I want to experiment. And so there are a lot of approaches to this. And India does give flexibility, and especially with the new NEP that's come out, I think there is a lot of good news, to be honest. And the best part about this NEP is the fact that it gives a lot of importance to vocational training. And the best also part is the same school who used to send their kids to, let's say, a workshop to do their science now becomes a part of their daily routine. So that means internship in the middle school becomes a part of their learning. Creativity is a part of their learning, because I know if the parents have put their, and because my children go to a CBSE school and ICSE school, so I know how structured they are. And so you would know what I'm talking about, where creativity seems to be missing. But the NEP is basically given that science, that space and the freedom for schools to bring in a lot of creativity, a lot of space, a lot of internships where they, get into carpentry, engineering, cooking, baking, whatever they like, which is good news. Which I think I remember when I was in school, I used to, take part in co-curricular activities, which was just like one part of our work. But I think we thoroughly enjoyed that. That experience was something that we enjoyed. So India, yes, NIOS is already existing. And I know a lot of people who homeschool their children. They prepare them to write certifications from the NIOS. I know a lot of people who have joined the IITs and the IIMs, and they've all been homeschooled, and they all have certifications from NIOS. And parents especially, they're a little apprehensive because they don't know what NIOS is. So they're a little, wary about whether I need to get my child into NIOS and get that certificate, that 10th standard exam certificate marks card, which says passed on from so-and-so. But I'd like to tell you this, that NIOS has that credibility. You can get your child if you feel that the child learns best when he's given that space, that freedom, that unschooling, or if you want to put him into a Montessori or any sort of structured schooling, it doesn't matter. But if you feel that the child is best learning himself, needs that space, you feel that the vision, like Nabeela said, she has a very clear vision for her child, that she wants to balance Islamic and bring in Islamic values with the deen and dunya together. And she has a very clear vision that this is what I want to drive my child. But if that is your vision and you want to get into homeschooling, you can choose an NIOS. If you're in Maharashtra, I know Maharashtra government also has an open university. You can write that. and the child will hold that certificate, which will get him into higher education. So India does have that, but it's unfortunate that people don't really know about it, because they're very less educated about the process. So yes, India does have that. And I think with NAP right now, I'm very happy, because it kind of drives the education system in a good way, where you have the flexibility, and it also gives that flexibility for you to allow the child to be homeschooled. They will offer you support in terms of the learning objectives that the child needs to be kind of going through the milestones that he goes through. So I think NEP is good, and yes, India does exist that, but very few people know about it.
Thank you. I think maybe there is some scope there for homeschooling as defined in Australia and homeschooling as defined in India to come together and work on this, Fathima, inshallah. But we are getting
yet. I'm sorry. Not really in terms of the way homeschooling is looked at in Australia. It's very different in India. In Australia, it's very, very structured, and the government kind of puts in a lot of effort in laying down certain models in terms of what they need to do. India is not really strong on that front. So the parents have to put in a lot of effort. So you can still do that. There are organizations that provides you. So there is a difference between, but NEP has opened the gates for it, which is good news. And I think hopefully there should be some sort of direction there. That's what I meant. Thank you.
Thank you. Which leads me to the next question to Dr. Ruby, because we actually are getting some comments about well-being of students and teaching to strengths. Dr. Ruby, the Victorian government conducted a national survey from April 27th until May 25th of more than 1,200 teachers' experiences during Australia's first wave of remote learning. 68% of all primary school teachers felt that remote learning was having a negative impact on students' emotional well-being. One teacher is quoted as having said, "It is the social, emotional well-being of our young people, particularly those at risk in their homes, that is my biggest concern." Would you agree with this teacher's comment? I think you have to unmute, Doctor.
Sorry, I was just saying that I think just listening to Nabeela and Fathima, I'm just thinking teaching is so hard. I think I'm so glad that I'm not a teacher. And yes, I think my colleagues and I are seeing an increase in children presenting with the difficulties in emotional regulation. There's more children presenting with sleep-related issues. But just for the audience, I think I would, before we talk about children's emotional response, I would like the audience to reflect on their own response to this situation. Children, no doubt, had to adopt very quickly to the evolving, unpredictable changes that happened recently, but we all know children are like sponges, and they observe how parents and teachers respond, and they simply absorb and act accordingly. So some families that I'm coming across have become hypervigilant, and they're anticipating the worst scenario, that there will be extreme food shortage, there's perhaps death is imminent, and they are very anxious. This has led to a complete loss of routine and structure, leaving children exposed to chaos and confusion. In this situation, I think you could imagine there's no learning is happening. And there's a genuine fear that these kids are stagnant in their learning and they're regressing if they're not helped at the right time in a timely fashion. But furthermore, I find some of these kids, with more independent streaks feel a bit constrained and overwhelmed with the constant parental presence and expectations while they're being homeschooled, while they're learning through remote learning. Some of you may be familiar with the term, the helicopter type style of parenting. Fathima would be very aware of this. And I think that's fine, that sort of that independent kid who's like to go out and explore, finding being at home through this remote learning a little bit constrained. But on the other hand, there are many families who have had the time, like I think Nabeela was mentioning, time to observe their own kids and bonded beautifully with their, through creative and physical activities together. Since most of these kids have a routine to follow, they are logging into their classrooms, they're completing their assigned work, they're doing extracurricular activities, they're having sports coaching, they're having music lessons, they're doing their Quran classes. My daughter teaches some children who learn Quran, and I think those kids are very eager to come into these classes despite this COVID happening. So these children have accepted that it is not a perfect scenario, but have adapted well. So I think in conclusion, I would think that the teachers are right, that it's, children are reacting in different ways according to, but my opinion is that according to the parenting and the personality factors, that's make it a big factor in how children are going to be, how children are responding now and how children are going to be in a few years from now.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, obviously, whatever is happening now is going to have long-term consequences, Doctor. So for the benefit of our young parents who are listening in, what would you say could perhaps be initial signs of confusion or stress or disengagement from learning that parents could detect and address in order to be able to prevent this further deterioration of the learning process?
I think I would probably divide this into two broad categories. Firstly, what is your child's approach to learning? You should be concerned and seek help if your child is not completing your tasks. They're lacking in motivation. That's a big factor. They're not being proud of their work, and they're getting easily frustrated. And it's a persistent failing to complete their assignments. Often children are referred to me that they are lazy and they're not completing their tasks. I think further they sometimes found to have learning difficulties, and it's not child's fault, and I think they need to be properly addressed and assessed. Secondly, I think if parents, as parents, you notice general behavioral changes, then including excessive crying or becoming irritable or blaming others for their not completing their tasks or for their mistakes or becoming oppositional. Again, some of these kids I see have difficulty sitting still, and they are on the move all the time, and are easily distracted, and they're distracting their peers, and they may have developmental or behavior disorders that may need further assessment. So I think I do spend a lot of time. I see children at 3 years of age, and I can clearly see that there are signs and that they need to be addressed. There are things that need to be addressed, and parents often get to grade 1 or prep and 2, and they have a series of blames, teachers to blame, schools to blame, and I think it is important for parents to really think about some of the things the child is going through and get them proper assessment, but then provide support. And I think I would also tell parents to be aware that the child may come to them with physical symptoms such as nightmares and bedwetting and soiling and sleep-related difficulties. It's a very common presentation of children who are not doing well at school and not learning, and they're presenting with psychosomatic symptoms, which parents really take hold of and then want us to sort that problem, but not actually sort the problem, which is the underlying that. And I think that's important to keep that in mind, that children are having difficulties with learning. But I think it's the last message I should have to remember. Parents have to remember that no child is perfect, and it is normal for most children to be anxious, to be angry, to be demotivated from time to time. And I think I like this quote that children are not things to be molded, but people to be unfolded. And I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
Well said. Very well said. Okay, Nabeela, I asked a grade 4 student recently what was the best thing and the worst thing she felt about remote learning. The best thing, she said, was still getting Wednesday as a catch-up day, like they used to do at school. And the worst thing was not being able to socialize with peers and friends. As a parent, from a parent's perspective, how would you respond to the best and the worst?
Okay. I think our current situation now has forced us to take a step back, put the brakes on, and re-examine our current schooling system, which still largely adheres to the century-old factory model of education. So everything else has progressed and evolved with the times, but the education system really hasn't. So I don't think any of us had ever imagined that this day would come, that our kids would be plucked out of their conventional classroom environment and plonked in front of a screen. So I feel that now there needs to be a more qualitative approach to education. And children don't really need to be taught as much as they need to be mentored, as everything they need is available right there at their fingertips. And it's more extensive than what a teacher can provide to them standing in front of the classroom. And each child is different. And with the way things are evolving right now, a one-size-fits-all approach is becoming redundant. And one of my most favorite quotes is by Albert Einstein, who said that everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. So in my conversation with other parents and some teachers, I've been made aware that some teachers have successfully used online learning to their benefit. So they've been able to tweak their learning plans and partially individualize it. And this has been primarily because they can now view each child's progress and setbacks in real time on an online consolidated system. And this was what they were taught at university to begin with. So that each child needs to be treated as an individual, taught according to their strengths and learning styles. But when it comes to implementing that in an overcrowded, under-resourced classroom, they're often forced to succumb to just scraping through the basics, barely keeping their head above water. So sometimes it helps to look to our past to understand our present and plan for our future. We don't have to look very far. Look at Finland, for example. They have undergone transformation in their education system in the last 40 years. They have no mandated standardized tests. They have no rankings or comparisons between students, schools, or regions. All the schools are publicly funded, and people in government agencies that are running them are educators. They're not businessmen. And every school has the same national goals and draws from the same pool of university-trained educators. So the result, Finnish children have a good shot at getting the same quality of education no matter where they live, whether it's in a rural town or a suburb in the city. So just some food for thought there. And for me personally, since you asked the best and the worst and what I make of it, in trying to make sense of all that is happening, for me as a parent, for myself as an individual as well, I'm drawn to reflect on the Quran. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to a mu'min as a date palm. So a date palm, a tree which is strong, a tree that's deeply rooted, evergreen, producing fruit all year round. If the children we are responsible for today are going to be the date palms of tomorrow, they need plenty of nurturing. They need the right soil, they need the right nutrients, the right amount of sunlight, water, and bucket loads of patience. And I'm sure every parent agrees with the last one. Heaps of patience. So, and they also need strong roots to overcome the storms and the uncertainty that surrounds them. And this will happen. It's a promise. We are tested. We are tried throughout our lives. And they also need to learn to withstand that harsh desert sun, and in turn produce sweet, delicious fruit and benefit the ones around them. So being able to absorb every nutrient that they can find and then use that to rise high, just like that date palm, always looking towards the sky, never wavering in their resolve, and always looking to grow taller and stronger, coming out of every situation, getting better. And in a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he has said that wondrous is the affair of a believer, as there is good for him in every matter. If he experiences pleasure, he thanks Allah, and it is good for him. If he experiences harm, he shows patience, and it is good for him. So the challenges we are facing with remote learning are unprecedented, but it isn't all doom and gloom. Our deen always tells us to have hope, never despair. A believer never despairs. So as Muslims, we need to look for the ease within this hardship, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that with every hardship, he sends us ease. So the ease is already there. And at the end of the day, what is your biggest worry? That your child's not going to learn their times table in time, or that they're not going to get into the course that they've worked so hard for? I mean, really, I think we need to reassess what truly matters. What are our priorities? And for every presumed setback that we think that this whole remote learning process is going to have on them, what we're failing to see is that they're gaining so much more. And we as parents have the potential to give them even more. And it all comes with trust, trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first, and then trusting in ourselves. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gifted us our children because he thought us to be worthy of raising them. No one else can do a job as good as we can as their parents, because they've been given to us. And so just being there for them, being present in the moment with them. And even if that means putting away your schoolwork, even if that means not following a routine for a day, just chilling out on the couch, reconnecting, just do it. Because you know what? You're not going to regret the moments you spend bonding with and connecting with your children. And you will find yourself falling in love all over again with that little bundle of joy you held in your hand so many years ago. So I think, in conclusion, I would say that this time is probably time for us to focus on what we can control. How can we nurture our primary aged kids and give them a holistic tarbiyah, something that they truly need? And inshallah, everything else will fall into place in time.
Inshallah. Thank you for that perspective. Now, Fathima, one of the pillars in what you do in your training organization, Evolve Ed, your pillars to elevating mental health is emotional regulation. What advice would you give to young parents listening into this conversation, especially about emotional regulation?
Wow, that's a loaded question, to be honest. Parents, I do realize the anxiety of us going with our kids every single day. We may tell you a lot. Nabeela may tell you something. Dr. Ruby is giving her perspective, I might say. And I know that a lot of times we feel very overburdened by it. So there's a lot of uh, self-doubt that comes in every single day. There's a lot of guilt that, especially as mums and even dads for that matter, we all go through. But trust, like I said, trust in the fact that your child will be okay. I very recently got a forward from my husband actually, and he forwarded, and I thought I should forward it to you, Shabi Bhai, but I didn't. But it's a Muslim guy in Bangalore, boy who was a school dropout, and I think he dropped out in 5th grade because he couldn't take it anymore. Yeah, I'll tell you these stories, which are real. And he dropped out of school because he just didn't gel with that idea. Now I don't know which course he was doing, but he was more inclined to technology. So he started up an organization with 2 mentors of his, and today he's actually someone who holds rights and patents to one of these innovations where he's built a kind of, I think it's a remote controlled, or it's a self-raised. So he's built an innovation where, he's got this car and it, can goes by itself. But what is really amazing is the fact that these kids are just so intelligent, but somewhere kids are born intelligent, but somewhere, the education system or our own anxieties and fears and expectation actually interferes in their natural intelligence. Now, I'll tell you another story of of a parent who had come to me, and this parent had come to me with a child who was in 8th grade, was not studying at all, was failing. They got him assessed from the school counselor. They actually told him that he had learning disabilities, and and he was actually advised to go for therapies. And so this guy comes to me and he says, you know what, Fatima, he's just not learning, and he's only interested in sports. He only wants to play football. So we had a couple of interactions with him. So I just asked him, said, what's wrong with him playing football? He says, but he's playing football. Who's going to study? He's not paying attention and to his studies, and because of which his grades are falling and his school is complaining, all that. So finally, on one of the times, I had to stop that parent and I told him, listen, don't interfere with what he's designed to do. Maybe his destiny is, maybe he's born to play football. Who knows? Yeah. So we never spoke after that with that parent. Now this parent comes to me, calls me, in fact, after 1.5 years, he calls me and he said, you know what, I have something to tell you. So I said, sure, tell me what. So his son, who was so good in football, 8th grade again, there was I think a team from FIFA or one of these German clubs, football clubs had come to India to select children under 16. So this boy was after the father and he said, I want to go and try out for this team. So father said, no, day 1. And he begged the father. And that day, I think something happened. He remembered my conversation. And he said, someday he woke up and he said, okay, go, try it out. Today, this child is actually playing for that German club, all sponsored. Okay. And he dropped out of, obviously, when he left the school and he joined another school. And he's just so happy. He's just so happy, and he's doing well in school. He's playing for his team. In fact, looking at him, his oldest brother who had joined engineering college, dropped that, went with his heart. And his passion was to play football, and he's joined his brother as well. So what I'm trying to say is the fact that, parents, Allah Ta'ala has given us and brought these kids with destiny. They will do what they're meant to do. Maybe some of them will become doctors because that's what they're supposed to do. Some of them will become engineers because that's what they're supposed to do. So trust that and go with your intuition, with what the child actually needs. Because at the end of the day, the whole aspect, the whole intention behind not schooling, education, irrespective of any approach you choose, any curriculum you choose, is to give that space for the child to explore himself, right? I know some children who cannot be homeschooled at all. They cannot. Put them into a very structured military ICSE school, they'll do very, very well. But there are some schools who are, some children who are just the opposite. They cannot thrive in a CBSE and ICSE school. Yeah. So they will thrive in an IB school. They'll thrive in an unschooling setup where there is no structure at all. Leave them. They will play with sticks. They'll play with stones. They'll play with mud, and they will tell you the science. They may not have the language, but they'll tell you exactly what the formula and the science is. So our journey as parents is to give that space. A is to trust God, trust your children, trust their innate ability to learn. Irrespective of whichever school they go, they're going to do well in their life. Definitely. Whether the child drops out in grade 5 or the child does his engineering. I know a lot of people who've done their engineering, done double PhDs, and very unhappy with their life. So I think from the mental health perspective, I think one thing is for you to work on your own reflections, I would say. Like, understand what is the system all about, understand who your child is, because I always tell the parents, before you become parents, there are some things you have to learn. You need to know the basics of human psychology or child psychology. You need to learn about yourself. You need to learn about schooling. You need to learn about you need to know a bit of everything, because that's going to give you that space to kind of, to know how to take it forward with them. So, but at the end of the day, I think one thing is, please don't fear, because Allah Ta'ala has taken care of your child. Well, he's never going to give them out of jobs. They will do wherever they are, they will do it. And children need to know that you trust them, irrespective of whatever they do. Like my daughter, at one point of time, she said, I want to take a gap year. And there were a couple of people who came to me and said, what, gap year? It's like 1 year of waste. What are you going to do? Like I said, there's no competition. So what? I mean, if she wants to take a gap year, let her, because that's good for her, because she took a gap year after 12th grade. I said, sure, take a gap year. But in that gap year, you're not going to sit and watch television. You're going to explore what you want to do next. So she interned with NGOs. She wanted to become a lawyer. She's studying law, by the way. So she joined a law firm. She spoke with different, different lawyers and understood what it meant. So that 1 year was a good year for her. And I trusted that. I gave her that space for her to understand. And she came back. She bounced back. And here she is. She's just doing what she's supposed to do. So please trust, work. A is trust Allah, trust yourself, trust your children. Whether they go to school or not, they're going to do well, for sure. Yeah. And even if they struggle, if they're meant to struggle, they will struggle. And if that's how their growth is going to come, that means if they're going to probably not do their 10th standard, maybe not do their 12th standard, or maybe they may have some struggle is, written into their destiny, they are still going to be okay. Allah Ta'ala never gives anything without a purpose. So trust him and allow, and you stand back. And I know it's very difficult, but I think the best thing for our parents is to have that capacity to be comfortable with our own pain, and also to be comfortable with the pain of our children and the struggles of our children. Because I think as a parent, that's one thing we don't want to do. We don't want to see our children struggling. But what we forget is the power of struggle for our children. Your children are going to struggle, whether it's academic, socially, emotionally, they are going to. Maybe with your relationship, maybe with future decisions, conflicts, they are going to. This is a part of life. And we have to be comfortable with that. It's going to be painful for us, but that's where the real growth happens. Allow that, trust that, because jo bhi hota hai, it's for good. So coming to the mental health, I think as parents, we have to work on our own perspectives, a sense of calmness, trust, faith. I think these are values that we need to inculcate in ourselves so that we can pass that on consciously, unconsciously, unknowingly, with purpose, intentionally to our children. Because at the end of the day, they will forget what was taught to them in 6th and 7th grade, but they will actually work on the values that we as a parent set for them. that is their direction, that is their navigation, that's their compass. So I think at the end of the day, we have to work on our own mental space. There are a lot of ways you can do that. You can talk to me separately if you want on how you can do that. But I think that is where, because if we are working on our own mental health, that's how we are going to keep our children, strong, happy, and most importantly, resilient. And resilience comes with pain. It doesn't come without it. So yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
I like the term, the power of struggle, but I think we can talk about that a bit later. Look, I think we probably went a little bit over time, but we still have about 15 minutes for questions and answers. So Jazakallah khair. Thank you to all of you, to Fatima, to Dr. Ruby, to Nabeela. Thank you for those perspectives and insights that you have provided to all our participants. We do have a number of questions and answers. I don't know if you'll be able to go through all of them. Inshallah, I will try. But just before we do that, I'm going to take a little commercial break just for a minute, and I'm going to just talk to you very briefly about AMP Australia. So okay, so AMP Australia is just a recent addition to the global chapter, and I think I'm very proud that we are bringing this AMP group in here because it truly is a global organization of professionals. So this was incorporated as a not-for-profit association only sometime in June. So we are very, very young, and I'm glad that we were able to present this web panel in such a short time. Our current focus, of course, is on building membership of professionals, and membership is now open to any Australian resident who is 18 and above. Our current objectives are upskilling and fundraising. Upskilling is like what we are doing today, talking about helping people. And fundraising is if we can get some money coming in, we will be able to support projects, not just in India, but also in Australia and around the world. Any feedback that you need to give to us, you can give to us at contact@ampaustralia.org.au, and that is our website. So please feel free. I guess in a way you are now part of this family. Thank you again for being here, and I am now going to open the floor for questions. So I presume, Sister Menas, you are going to take over the questions? Okay, while she's figuring it out.
I think her internet is unstable. Shabir Saab, would you like to take a question Q&A, or do you want me to help you with that?
Okay, I can do that. I can do that. Okay. There are quite a few questions. Okay, this one is to an anonymous attendee. Ms. Fatima, in your opinion, is homeschooling an atmosphere where you can build enough resilience to face the challenges of the real world? For example, if you eliminate competition between peers, do kids ever experience failure? How do they deal with it when faced with failure as adults? Fatima, you are unmuted.
I'm sorry, I think there was a little lag in the thing. So I have the question right in front of me. So I'm just gonna quickly read that because I couldn't hear you. There was a pause. In your opinion, is homeschooling an atmosphere where you can build enough resilience to face the challenges of the real world? For example, if you eliminate competition between peers, do kids ever experience failure? How do they deal with when faced with failures as adults? you know what? We as parents are very, very, we're in a hurry to teach them everything. Like we feel that this is when they have to learn everything in school. And if you don't give them, so but the reality is that if children have to learn something, they will learn their own ways. So I know a couple of kids who have done brilliantly well, and they have actually accepted competition. And I'm talking about competition where they've been homeschooled and they're writing exams to enter the, the NEET exams and the IITs and the IIMs, and they've done fairly well. They're not stressed by it, and that's because the child had that capacity and the attitude for it. Yeah. But there are some kids who kind of succumb to it and they find it very difficult. So for you, I think it all depends on the child. It all depends on how we expose the child to some form of resilience with them. So whether it's in form of, let's say, schooling, or in forms of you take them outside to play, it all depends on the child, to be honest. And if the child does not learn, if you have decided to homeschool him and probably he doesn't understand schooling, I mean, competition, and maybe didn't build that sense of resilience, if not now, he will do it later. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. So one of the biggest questions that parents ask me about their kids is, if I homeschool my child, will he be able to fit into the mainstream? So the answer is, most of the time, they will be able to do it. In fact, some of them who've been homeschooled, if their nature and character is welcoming them to do it, they in fact are far more resilient than other people. But if there is a child who's not meant for homeschooling, requires that kind of exposure and needs that sense of competition because that's where he thrives, then that's how it's going to be. So so I think we should stop like worrying about things like whether he's going to learn or not. He will learn. If not now, he will learn when he's in PU or he's going to be in college. He will definitely learn that. But it all depends on the child and how it works for them.
Thank you. Okay, I have a question from Samira. I want to ask a question to Dr. Ruby. My 9-year-old girl, she is very good in her studies. She's skinny. My question is, she can't sleep early, although she go to bed early, and all her siblings sleep in sometimes. She's also not happy with this routine. Can you recommend, do I need to consult a GP for this, or will it be fine after some time?
I think sleep is a major issue with lots of kids, and that need to be properly assessed and seen as a mother. And you worried, but it's also interesting that your daughter is also worried about her sleep. So I think she definitely should see somebody, whether it's a GP or a pediatrician, to just work out. Some children don't need to sleep 10 to 12 hours, although it's recommended. But why is it? Is she anxious, or is there other things going on which is interfering with the sleep? So I would strongly advise that she's not just going to grow out of sleep problems, because sleep problems persist if you don't deal with it at the right time. So I hope it's helpful. So you should see someone, yes.
Thank you. I have a question from Shireen Sheikh. Homeschooling, remote schooling, how do we as parents cope when we too are working from home? The major concern I have is the style of teaching, which differs from what we learned in our times and the teaching style of Australia. I need a volunteer to answer that question. Fathima?
Yeah, if you want me to, I can answer that. So basically, I know that the way we learned is very different from the education system here. So that's where I think our responsibility comes in. We've chosen them to be educated. We've chosen this place for us to, for us to stay and to reside. So somewhere there is a bit of effort that I think you need to put in to understand how the education system works here as well. It's going to be very tough. But at the same time, I think that's the effort that we need to put in. I think we need to somewhere spend that time to understand how this style is over here, how it works for your child, whether it is working or not at all. That is something that you need to. So somewhere what happens is when we send our children to school, we feel like, okay, so this is responsibility is over. They're going to take care of them. I don't need to really learn a lot about it. I don't need to know because I trust the school. They're going to learn. But I think that's where we falter. I think somewhere we do need to be involved. We need to be engaged. We need to understand how it is happening, what is happening. And yeah, if we have to learn certain ways of engaging in terms of learning, teaching, learning, if we need to kind of learn newer ways, we have to be okay with it, because this is the choice that we've chosen for our children. So yes, it is different. It's going to be difficult, but that's where I think our responsibility lies in, is to understand what the current system is and what your kids are learning, and support them in that way. Because at the end of the day, we are partners with the schools. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. There's another one for Dr. Ruby, but I don't seem to be able to find it. Just give me a moment. Okay, this is a question for Nabeela, that it actually is a double question. When you do homeschooling, how do you manage socializing, making friends when they do not come in direct contact with their peers at this age? It may affect maturity as they grow up. How do you tackle this, Nabeela?
I think this is a major misconception about homeschooling, where people think that if your child is homeschooled, they're pretty much stuck at home with a parent and the parent's telling them what to do, and that's about it. They're not getting any interaction, any stimulation from an external source. In fact, if you look at all the studies that have been done, homeschooling children are very social, and they do lead very social lives. So in children that do attend normal school, they're spending 9 to 5 or 9 to 3 within a school setting, and then they have their socializing on the weekends, or as they would say, extracurricular activities on the weekend. But when you're homeschooling, your child has an opportunity to have their extracurricular activities anytime in the week. And a lot of homeschooling parents attend co-ops, which is basically when a group of homeschooling families get together and go on excursions, have learning groups. So they might have an incursion where a child's learning a particular subject, or even just for the socializing aspect, where they are interacting with not only students or friends of the same age, but siblings of varied ages. So they do come in contact with peers of not only their age group, but also children from different age groups. And if you think about it, this would give them more maturity, and it will set them up for different challenges in life as they deal with different circumstances and situations, whether it be a sporting activity, whether it be a team sport, whether it be whatever it is that they're undertaking as a homeschool child. So yeah, this is a major misconception, and I think I'm happy that question came up, because it needs to be clarified that no, the kids aren't just cooped up inside the house. They are living fruitful, meaningful lives in their own way.
Okay. Do we have time for one more question, Shehzad Bhai?
Yes, Shabir bhai, I've extended the time, so no worries about it. Don't worry about the timing.
Okay, there's a question from Aisha Siddiqa. It is a question, I think, again, I probably am going to ask Fathima to do this. Can an Indian homeschool child, I guess after passing that exam, is that recognized overseas from what you know up till now?
So usually it is like another. So basically, this is like, again, I'm using a little bit of not clarity. So when you put your child to a school, and if he's following a CBSE, you get a certificate saying that he's completed a course, which is a structured course by CBSE. And if you've put your child into ICSE, you get that certification. Now that is recognized anywhere. It's recognized by the Indian authorities, education system. It is organized. The same thing with NIOS. It is also recognized by the Indian higher schooling systems, your higher education. It's also, as far as I understand, recognized by international colleges and universities as well. As far as I know, I do have that understanding that it is well recognized, but I think I'll have to kind of do a little bit of homework in terms of whether it's level, because they have different levels. Now, level till level 10th or 12th, that's something which I need to kind of get a little bit of clarity. But yes, it is recognized because it is taken as something which is credible by Indian higher education system or outside as well. So it is recognized.
Thank you. Also, there is another question, which I think is a pretty broad question, but I think, Nabeela, I'm going to ask you to answer this. Do you think the Muslim community is too tunnel visioned in guiding children towards medicine and other such professional courses rather than innovation and creativity? How do we curb this?
I wouldn't say Muslim community has that tendency. I think that's across a lot of cultures where they push their children towards certain career choices. And I think that also comes from the background that that certain communities and have come from, where they want their children to do better than themselves, want them to live better lives. And there is a certain mentality that has driven that thinking. But having said that, I think times have changed, times are changing. And if you look at our, going back to our Islamic heritage and culture and Islamic history, art and all those disciplines have also flourished equally well, along with medicine and all the other so-called professional careers, as people would say. And whether or not the Muslim community needs to change the way they think, I think for us in this discussion, the more relevant thing to think about or portray would be, what are we doing as parents, as families, to change that? So change happens from within our families. So within our circle of influence, are we creating that change? Are we more accepting of our children choosing whatever career choice they want? Or are we also deep set in that mentality where we're pushing them towards something that we think they should do rather than what they want to do? So yeah, I think it's more about what are we doing to change it, rather than saying, oh, this is how the Muslim community is, so what can I do about it? Because we're part of that community.
Can I just add in, Shabir bhai, if that's okay?
Yep.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, parents, it's all about what you think and what are your values. Because if you are a kind of a family who believe that music is not something that is suitable for you, it's something which is not okay with you as a family, then obviously that would kind of come as a hindrance. So it all depends on what you are and how you are and what it is like. So if you're someone who is okay with football and get your child getting into something which is different from what you thought, and if you're okay with do that, have that clarity from the beginning. I mean, that's the reason why I think discussions like these become very important, because it kind of changes the perspective. So if you are okay with getting yourself into conversations and discussions, try to see about try to hear from people what they're doing, and then at the end of the day, it is all about what you are and what you want. So if you're okay with your child exploring something which is completely different from what you were told, and have that sense of that growth mindset and that open mindset to allow the child to explore in something new, then you will do it, and it's okay to do it. So at the end of the day, it is all that. I know a family in England who is, Islamic. They walk their life on Islamic values. Prayer is very important for them, and I know they're such beautifully kind of integrated as a part of their daily life. But at the same time, they're okay with instruments. So they have basically exposed their children. They have 3 kids, and all of them play an instrument. One plays a tabla, one plays a guitar, and the other one plays a piano. So, and that's the model that they have, and that's the clarity that they have with. So at the end of the day, it all depends on what you want and what you are okay with.
Okay, thank you. I think there was a question from Sister Roxana, which was addressed to Nabeela, but I'm going to ask Dr. Ruby to come in perhaps after Nabeela has spoken, where she is basically asking parents as to what parents are going to do to get more involved in the education of their children and try to remedy a faulty education system. So that's a multi-edged question, but I'll start with you, Nabeela, and then I'm going to ask Dr. Ruby to come in with some comments.
Okay, so I'm reading the question here because I'm trying to understand what's being asked. Do you agree the parents need more education support guidance? I don't think parents need, of course, everyone needs support as in to help them in raising their children, because you can't raise your children on your own. You need community support. You need the support of family and friends around you. But when it comes to figuring out what your child wants, I don't think anyone knows your child better than you do. So I think that the question stems from a lack of, for lack of a better word, confidence in yourself. And I think that is something that you need to ask yourself. Why do I feel inadequate in addressing my child's needs? And why do I feel that I cannot meet their needs, or that I feel that I lack it? Because yes, we all need a support system. We all need professionals. We all need professionals in the fields that we are looking to guide us. But at the end of the day, I think parents don't give themselves the credit they deserve. They need to be confident in themselves, in knowing that whatever choice they choose for their child is the best for their child, because nobody knows their child as well as they do. So I think parents, the lack of them not taking charge is them lacking confidence in themselves more than anything else. So you can have the best education system, you can have the best support, you can be living in Finland, as I put it, but if you're not going to trust yourself in making the right decisions, nothing's going to work.
Dr. Ruby, any comments?
In regards to this question that why are people not leading the change themselves? Is that
can I repeat the question, Doctor?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you agree the parents need more education support guidance than the children in order for them to understand and support their children? Why are the parents not taking the charge along with their children to reform the education system? How long are we going to continue with the faulty education system?
So I think we'd had some discussions prior to this thing that and I think that's why you're putting me in here in terms of the education system and my approach to. I also have 3 children and who had gone through different schooling systems, and I think, as Nabeela says, that we need to know our child's need, and I think every child has their special need, a special need of learning in a learning way. But I don't know that, and I do think that not all parents are capable of, they might know how their child, but I don't think they can teach their child. And the number of factors are there. There are a number of factors which should be taken into account. Their parents may not be educated themselves. A lot of my children from a lot of backgrounds, they don't even have finished their own schooling. They have their own mental health problems. They are not able to go into homeschool or remote school, or they need a proper guidance. And then there are children with disabilities or challenges. I think one of anonymous caller had put in a request, and I've answered them, but privately. And I think children who have they have a child with special need, for instance, and I think they need professionals to sort of guide them into a system, and they need school. Then they are, and this is why we do have lots of schooling system, and homeschooling is one of the schooling system, not the schooling system, but I think there is Islamic schools, and there are private schools. There are public and private, the sort of other schools, and they're Montessori's. And I think you need to know your child, which school fits that child. And I would never be able to homeschool my children because I don't have, I don't think I have the patience to teach. I taught them Quran, and I think it was hard enough for me. They all learned it, and I'm very proud of that. But I think it was, it seemed, you have to have patience, but also you have to have time. I like to do what I like to do. I would still want to carry on doing what I want to, because that's, happy moms make happy children. I don't want to be stuck teaching my child and wanting them to learn something just because I want them to learn, but I wanted them to be successful. So I think, so I don't blame schooling system as such, because I think I have experienced a lot of different schooling system for myself, through my husband, through my kids, and I think if the school is not fitting the child's style, I'm very happy to move the child to another system. But I don't think I have, I'm not a teacher, and I'd respect a lot of teachers who are doing a very hard work in very difficult circumstances. And I think this is where, yes, parents do need to respect teachers a bit more than what teachers are given respect. And there are systems that may not fit their child's need, then they need to think about another alternative. So I think that's why you got me in here.
Yes, because I remember we had discussed this, so I thought I'd just bring you in for your comments. Look, I think we have gone way beyond our time, and I respect the time of our panelists and all our participants for being such patient listeners. So I think I would now like to end the session. You have our email, you have our website, so please do feel free to stay in touch with us. And if we need another sequel to this discussion, inshallah, we will be happy to do that. So allow me to close with a little prayer. Glory is to you, O Allah, and praise is to you. I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship but you. I seek your forgiveness and I repent to you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shabir Sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Shehzad Bhai and Sister Mena, Shoaib, everybody for supporting this. And inshallah, we will do this again soon.
Inshallah, inshallah. Thank you so much to all the participants as well. It was wonderful to have you all on board. So AMP keep organizing these sessions by highly qualified professionals and experts in their particular field to share their learning and viewpoints to guide not only the youths but everyone with their own life's experiences, as we have just seen what we have discussed today. So we request you to keep joining these sessions and benefit from it. We will inshallah keep you updated about all our upcoming webinars, inshallah. So we'll be ending this session for now. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much all the speakers as well, Dr. Ruby, Ms. Fathima, Ms. Nabeela. It was wonderful to have you all. And thank you so much, Shabir Sahab. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Wa alaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.